Okay, but we've got this early evolution of photosynthesis in future perspectives in plant biology. This is in Plant Physiology, published by Oxford. So, 5 pages, but double column, so like 10 pages. Here we go. And I don't know what this is, so feel free to ask questions as we go. Photosynthesis. I can't even speak. You know what? I need to actually drink some proper amount of liquid. Hold on 1 second here. That's interesting. I mean, I know people always love like talking about their own like how there's always movies about movies, theater about theater. Yeah, and so like people always love how things are working, you know? Yeah, so the technology that film like so technology like the film likes technology. Interesting. Okay, that's better. I had to actually drink a few gulps of water as opposed to sipping the beer because I do just get confused after a while. Okay, so early evolution of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis Photosynthesis is the only significant solar energy storage process on Earth and is the source of all of our food and most of our energy sources. Oh, okay, yeah, 2001. That's fair. An understanding of the origin and evolution of photosynthesis is therefore of substantial interest, as it may help to explain inefficiencies in the process and point the way to attempts to improve various aspects for agricultural and energy applications. Super deferentially, mm, self self reflexively. Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, the thing is, it's like, how is the technology telling the story, and how is the story changing the technology that gets used? Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, and there's like big like obelisk things too. A wealth of evidence indicates that photosynthesis is an ancient process that originated not long after the origin of life and has evolved via a complex path to produce the distribution of types of photosynthetic organisms and metabolisms that are found today. Oh, that's the film screen. Interesting. Turn it 90 degrees. Interesting. Figure 1 shows an evolutionary tree of life based on small subunit RNA analysis. Of the three domains of life, bacteria, archaea, and eukarya, chlorophyll-based photosynthesis has only been found in the bacterial and eukaryotic domains. The ability to do photosynthesis is widely distributed throughout the bacterial domain in 6 different phyla with no apparent pattern of evolution. Photosynthetic phyla include cyanobacteria, proteobacteria, that's purple bacteria, green sulfur bacteria, GSB, firmicutes, Heliobacteria, filamentous and oxygenic phototrophs, FAPs, also called the green non-sulfur bacteria, and acidobacteria, Raymond. Okay. In some cases, the cyanobacteria and the GSB, essentially all members of the phylum, are phototropic, while in others, in particular the proteobacteria, the vast majority of species are not phototropic. Overwhelming evidence indicates that eukaryotic photosynthesis originated from endosymbiosis of cyanobacteria-like organisms, which ultimately became chloroplasts. Yeah, this is, as I understand it, the history is that there was something that got really good at photosynthesis, and that just got taken on by a whole bunch of other stuff. And that's what chloroplasts are, which are the cells or the subcellular structures that do the photosynthesis in plants. So the evolutionary origin of photosynthesis is to be found in that bacterial domain. Significant evidence indicates that the current distribution of photosynthesis in bacteria is the result of substantial amounts of horizontal gene transfer, which has shuffled the genetic information that codes for various parts of the photosynthetic apparatus so that no one simple branching diagram can accurately represent the evolution of photosynthesis. However, there are some patterns that can be discerned from detailed analysis of the various parts of the photosynthetic apparatus. so some conclusions can be drawn. In addition, the recent explosive growth of available genomic data on all types of photosynthetic organisms promises to permit substantially more progress in unraveling this complex evolutionary process. I'd ask you to consider what you are now describing as itself a form of technology. There's a strong argument for it. What do you mean by what I am now describing? Like the paper I'm reading? Like the scientific paper? Oh, technological convergence and improved efficiency? Sure. I mean, but that's evolution can be thought of as like a technical thing, like of a constantly improving technology. I don't see that as too radical. Like people have said that before. I was thinking you meant like me reading this here. I was like, maybe, but that's more complicated. But like evolution is basically you can think of it as an optimization process, especially like evolutionary algorithms that are used in machine learning. Basically, that's exactly what it does. Is it keeps evolving and tries to get to some sort of at least local maximum that will it keeps working to like keeps getting a little bit better at whatever it does. So, and if everyone wants to see, this is what they're talking about. I mean the technology doesn't start with humans. Oh, well, that's fair. Well, technology evolution, of course, does not start with humans. So yeah. I think I agree. As far as I understand what you said. Yeah, so this is the thing. The tree of life does not start as a tree, like where there's like a point where it blossoms out, but like when there's horizontal gene transfer, things are just sort of like it's a mesh, and the mesh sort of evolves. It's sort of so you've got this like hypercube of evolution. Weasel words. Well, I think I do. I don't know exactly what you mean here, my friend. And I do weasel sometimes. Can't get away from it. At least I didn't call you reasonable. Origins of photosynthesis. We know very little about the earliest origins of photosynthesis. There have been numerous suggestions as to where and how the process originated, but there is no direct evidence to support any of the possible origins. There is suggestive evidence that photosynthetic organisms were present approximately 3.2 to 3.5 billion years ago in the form of stromatolites, layered structures similar to forms that are produced by some modern cyanobacteria, as well as numerous microfossils that have been interpreted as arising from phototrophs. Evolution is distinct from technology, though, is technology when it has some improved stability or function. I think sometimes evolution can act without stability. It's just not going to be looking very pleasant. It'll just sort of like run wild. But if there's no constraints on evolution, you're just going to have a whole lot of other things going on. It's only going to be constrained by whatever the cells can do. But that's just a different kind of constraint. So evolution's going to happen, but it'll just be what you might consider more random. But it'll still be like evolution of some sort, because you'll just be constrained by whatever the cells that are evolving are doing, like their limitations. Even if it's not imposed from the nature outside, there's still like an internal nature, like a system that it has to deal with. In all these cases, phototrophs are not certain to have been the source of the fossils, but are inferred from the morphology or geological context. There is also isotropic evidence for autotrophic carbon fixation at 3.7 to 3.8 billion years ago, although there is nothing that indicates that these organisms were photosynthetic. You mean that technology that morphs matter to make it function differently on the way that improves its reproduction as a meme. I mean technology that morphs matter to make it function differently on a way that improves its reproduction as a meme. Oh, okay. That's fair. So you're talking about like at the the semiotic level, how the signs are going to evolve and continue through like, being transmitted. Now I see where you're going. Even if not giving an example, dishwashers. Wait, dishwashers? How do they get reproduced as a meme? And sand? Like the sand meme from Star Wars? But I mean, the technology, the tech as evolving hand in hand with like the tropes and the memes. Like I mean, I think I'm on board with you on that because the technology that the sorts of ideas that can be transmitted are technologically based. Marketing for dishwashers, sand is made from rocks and water. Okay. I'm still not getting the dishwasher bit though. Marketing for dishwashers. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Oh, Richard Dawkins' meaning of memes. Okay, yeah, I don't remember all my Dawkins. I read it. I actually did read Dawkins, but a very long time ago now. So, yeah, apologies. I don't remember all my Dawkins meme talk. But I can say I did read that whole thing a while back in the Selfish Gene and and like one of the other books. Okay. But like if I'm missing if I'm screwing something up, let me know. All of these claims for early photosynthesis are highly controversial and have engendered a great deal of spirited discussion in the literature. Evidence for the timing of the origin of oxygenic photosynthesis and the rise of oxygen in the atmosphere is discussed below. The accumulated evidence suggests that photosynthesis began early in Earth's history, but that was probably not one of the earliest metabolisms, and that the earliest form of photosynthesis were anoxygenic, with the oxygenic forms arising significantly later. The fact that lots of dishwashers are in homes is evidence of reproduction being a good way to make the memes stick around. I should have picked pencils. Okay, so I see. Yeah, so technology does govern like how things are transmitted. Like dishwashers are in homes. That's fair. Yeah, so the question here is, where does all of this come from and why? And the idea that like we need to have, and I guess the question you're asking here is, how did this yeah, so exactly why would you, yeah, so here's your question. Why are all these things being transmitted in the way that they are? So like dishwashers in homes, someone saying that they're in love, does that replicate in the person somehow? What is the technology that is the medium that the meme is getting that is it's subsisting in? So I mean that would be at least be on brand for you. Chlorophylls are essential pigments for all the phototropic organisms. Chlorophylls are themselves the product of a long evolutionary development and can possibly be used to help understand the evolution of other aspects of photosynthesis. Chlorophyll biosynthesis is a complex pathway with 17 or more steps. Right, so the idea is if we look at genes as only one type of meme, anything is a meme if it gets self-copied. Yeah, I mean, you got to be careful, like, saying anything, though. I mean, that's kind of, I think Dawkins was a very, like, he made this a whole, like, the foundation of his philosophy. But, just saying anything fits is going to screw up a lot of other stuff. And it does it for a long time through adaptive morphology that makes it a stable or viral meme. Yeah, I mean, you do got to be careful that you're reading too much into stuff and you're saying, look, everything's a meme. Well, no, everything is not a meme. But, like, you can interpret a lot of things in this way. Now, the question is photosynthesis a meme? No. It's an evolutionary process. It's, like, genetic. And in that sense, it is very closely related to memes. But the question is, like, I guess you're asking is, what is the stability here? What is the technology that enables the photosynthesis to continue? And so the abstraction to take here is that whatever happened with these bacteria is something impressive. Oh, I completely agree. And so that's interesting. Yes, photosynthesis meme. All right. Putting it in all caps in a semiotics does not make you correct. Okay. I apologize. You're still wrong. The early part of the pathway is identical to has a meme because bacteria found a popular way to hang out. Yeah, down at the bacteria bar, they were all drinking around and be like, this is the coolest thing ever. We're going to keep hanging out with this. Oh, I know you're kidding on that one. All right, but let's go find out what this author has to say about what actually happened here. The early part of the pathway is identical to heme biosynthesis in almost all steps and has clearly been recruited from that older pathway. All right, so heme biosynthesis, I don't know what a heme is. It's something like hemoglobin or something, some sort of blood thing. The later steps include the insertion of magnesium and the elaboration of the ring system and its substituents. The earliest version of the pathway, and that used by most modern anaxogenic photosynthetic organisms, almost certainly was anaerobic, but both not requiring and not tolerating the presence of oxygen. Yeah, heme is blood? Okay, but I don't really understand what they mean by heme biosynthesis here. I don't know a lot of these words, actually, but whatever heme biosynthesis is, I mean, in the blood of a plant, I guess, or the bacteria, the blood of the bacteria. However, all modern oxygenic photosynthesis organisms now require oxygen as an oxidant at several steps in the pathway. This has been explained in terms of gene replacement of the gene coding for the enzymes in these steps, with the result that the overall pathway is unchanged, but the enzymes at key steps are completely different in different groups of phototropes. Blood before it was real blood? Okay. He-Man is fiction. That's awesome. That's probably the best autocorrect in a while. He-Man is fiction. I used to watch He-Man when I was a kid. A key concept in using chlorophyll biosynthesis pathways to infer the evolution of photosynthesis is the Granic hypothesis, which states that the biosynthesis synthetic pathway of chlorophyll recapitulates the evolutionary sequence. Shane, what's up? Should give Shane a little shout out. There's actually a decent argument that chloroplasts were originally separate organisms that ended up forming an endosymbiotic relationship with the other cells that go on to form plants. I think they said that in passing really fast earlier, that they think that's what happened. I think that's right, or at least that is, I think, the going theory at the moment. And the author said that earlier, but they didn't get to that point yet in their main discussion. It's like the guest who moved in. Yeah, but everyone liked that guest. They were cool. Like they brought like they had beer. If anyone doesn't know Shane, you should go check out Shane. I was looking at a stream the other day. He was talking about the Stasi in East Germany, and it's like a fascinating, terrible topic. And Shane knows history and sociology, and like explains this stuff extremely well, and you're gonna like feel like you actually are getting into the historical topics and learn stuff. So it's a 2010 paper. I mean, this is not terribly old, but I guess it is old. But anyway, like if you don't know Shane, you can go check him out.
Sir. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Synestemiotic, for the 100 bits.
Science Semiotics gifted 100 bits. Science Semiotics says forehead 100.
Farhead 100, thank you. Yeah, so yeah, everyone, if you haven't, go follow Shane and you can learn something about history and the world and all sorts of like why things are the way they are and like the current state of politics and social things and oh yeah. But anyway, good to see you, Shane. All right, so what were we talking about? Yes, Synestemiotic got me reading all these very, very big words. This is an appealing idea and probably is at least partly true. However, in some cases, in particular the situation of chlorophyll and bacteriochlorophyll, it has been argued that the strict version of the Granic hypothesis is misleading and other interpretations are more likely. All photosynthetic organisms contain carotenoids, which are essential for photoprotection, usually also function as accessory pigments and in many cases serve as key regulatory molecules. Carotenoids, unlike chlorophylls, are also found in many other types of organisms, so their evolutionary history may reflect many other functions in addition to photosynthesis. All right, one thing about the evolution of bacteria, they do not evolve as fast. The main way these things evolve is the horizontal transfer of genetic material. Yes, they pass their genetic material on to their children, but more often than not, they're swapping bits of genes with other nearby bacteria or viruses. This is the main driver of evolution at this level. It is not what we do where we pass genes on to kids. They just swap genes horizontally sideways. And so the idea that, like, the way, like we were talking with Sensimiacs, the way we transfer genes, transfer genes, that technology is not what these things are doing. They have more of a general process where they can hold on to and just make genes. Yeah, it is very hot. Like the amount of like switching around like making new proteins, it happens constantly, and they're always swapping like protein like formulas. It's like, yeah, they're basically swapping their recipes constantly for how to make things, and this is why it's really messy, because you can't figure out, there is no like easy line, and they're swapping recipes for making genes constantly. And so the way they're set up is more of like a general factory than us, where we make kids or whatever, and then like those kids put like combine their genetic material with other people and they make more kids. No, like I can just give you yeah, that's completely disgusting, but I guess like apparently they have a coke filled sex orgies according to Madison Cawthorn, so maybe that is what they do. Shane says, it's also why it took a long time for reproductive mutations to move through the allele. Yeah, I mean, this is why genetic problems that we have are so damaging. We can't get rid of them, but it's also good. It makes us much more stable in some sense. We have a huge amount of stability compared to other things because we have all of it has to be built into us. And this is one of the reasons they think that we have differences between males and females, whereas bacteria are basically all the same, is because you can't kill everybody all at once if everyone's slightly different. And so at best, if something targets all the males, it might kill all of them, but you're still gonna have a ton of females left over, or vice versa. If something kills all the females, some of them are gonna live, and you'll still have all the males to help out. So it's like this sort of dimorphism makes a big difference. But like if you're like bacteria and something screws with the bacteria and everyone's swapping the genes, you can kill all the bacteria very quick. And so this is a problem. So, but on the upside, there's a lot of bacteria, so it probably won't kill all of them. So there's different structures for keeping things alive and swapping genes. Yeah, so sexual reproduction adds diversity with stability. That's right. So this is a complicated thing. So, and these ideas were really hard to figure out until people started looking at them carefully, and they realized that the diversity really does increase stability. Like it really does. And so if everything is homogenous, it dies off really fast. Yeah, don't boink your closest family. Yeah, exactly. And people are like, oh yeah, we want purity of the races. It's that will get you killed so quickly. You are fools. Well, not for too many generations anyway. Yeah. And any sort of there's any sort of small group of people tend to be very susceptible to one bad disease can wipe everyone out just really easily. Okay. Anywho, reaction centers. The RC complex is at the heart of photosynthesis. So much attention has been paid to understand the evolution of RCs. A wealth of evidence, including structural spectroscopic, thermodynamic, and molecular sequence analysis, clearly segregates all known RCs into two types of complexes called type 1 and type 2. Anoxygenic phototrophs have just one type, either type 1 or type 2, while all oxygenic phototrophs have one of each. Icelandic, I don't know. Well, there's only two groups of people that are genetically that you can only well, I'm sure they have to figure it out, but the truth is, I was talking to a biologist a while back. There's only two groups of people, and it's not Icelandic, for where you can do genetic studies that go back many generations without intermarrying of anyone else. And one of them is the Finns. The Finns are the weird cousins up north, and like all like the Swedes and the Norwegians and the Danes and like the Russians are all like, we like them, but they're weird, and they just stick to themselves. And like that's how it was in the past. I'm sure the Finns are very nice nowadays, but like whatever. But like apparently the Finns are you can do genetic studies on them, and the other ones are the Hasidic Jews, because it's a religious thing, and they stay within the religious group. Yeah. Oh no, exactly. It's cultural. But like these are the only groups. No, these are the only These are the only actual groups of humans where you can do genetic studies. Because this is what the biologist said. Those are the only two groups of people. No, everyone, not comparatively. Everyone else has had too much sex with other people. Everyone else has had too much sex with other people. Comparatively, the religious Jews and the Finns are the only ones that you can actually use as control groups. They're the only ones. And this is information I got from, nope, not Mongolians. I don't know, maybe they were limited to like Western groups that they had access to, but I don't think so. Everyone else, their position was that everyone else has had too much sex with too many other people. And believe me, this is like direct quote. Like certain people fuck everyone. Some people like they're still promiscuous, but like these are the only groups where you can do any sort of multi-generational study without too much worry about having genes from other groups get in. So I don't know about the Mongolians, but this is what I was told. So. And one of the interesting things about this is that actually you can find historical events in the genetic code from when things happened from a certain amount of time ago, because the amount of mutations that happen is kind of regular over time. And so if something happened 50,000 years ago, you can see reflections of that in the genetic code. Because like something happened to all the humans, like maybe there was a bad few years or whatever, and so you'll see that the genetic code all got changed at once, and you'll see that, and you can actually see historical events more accurately than you can with the physics, because the physics, that's probabilistic. The genetic code actually for certain time periods is more precise in dating certain events than even the physics is, because the body cuts down on genetic mistakes. And since it cuts down on genetic mistakes, the probabilistic, it doesn't allow for mutation errors. And so you can actually calculate the dates of certain things more accurately based on when the genetic code changed. Yeah. Well, the junk DNA might not be junk, as you're indicating. So these are things that are going on, and so they can look at a lot of this data, and a lot of this data may be a lot more accurate than you might like initially realize. That they're looking at this and they say, well, we don't know certain things, but we may know a lot of other stuff. Okay. Should have drank this beer faster. Because now it's all foamy. Yeah, I should drink my water. But anyway. Okay. Anoxygenic phototrophs have just one type, either type 1 or type 2, while all oxygenic phototrophs have one of each type. The primary distinguishing feature of the two types of RCs are the early electron acceptor cofactors, which are FES centers in type 1 RCs and phytin quinone complexes in type 2 RCs. The distribution of RC types on the tree of life is shown in Figure 1, and a comparative electron transport diagram that compares the different RCs in different types of organisms is shown in Figure 2, with type 1 RCs color-coded green and type 2 RCs color-coded purple. So where's that? Where's my purple? I don't see no purple. Is that like above? I don't see purple. Oh well. Like, what if some ancient bacterium buried a sequence that turns out to cause philosophy in humans? I mean, like, is it just some random genetic code that made us smarter than like whatever else like around? I don't know. It seems unlikely that there's a just like simplistic answer to like whatever made us smart. Yeah, maybe the pink. Like maybe this is what they made purple here. Oh, so yeah, purple bacteria, but this kind of looks pink to me. I don't know what you guys are seeing on your side. But yeah, it was the idea that we're gonna all track anything back to just some bacterium that some master sequence. It just seems unlikely. Yeah, well, of course we keep evolving. We can't stop evolution. Shane says, I do think that there's a pretty significant genetic evolution point that allowed sapiens to be different from other hominids. Yeah, I guess at some point, we have to have diverged at some spot. Now the question is, what was that did it? And was it like strictly genetic, or was it a combination of other things? Yeah, we can believe a lot of weird stuff. Like, yeah, why do we have this ability to believe? Why do we think the way we do? We can trust outside of our ability. It's got to be, yeah, that's a change in our mental structure. But the idea that it's going to be reflected directly in the genes is a really big jump, because a lot of stuff, yeah, the storytelling technology, that's fair. The idea that you can track it back to some sort of sequence is not going to fly, because evolution, what's it, not evolutionary genetics, it's generative, like when you like the generation of our structures in our brains can't reduce down to the genes. It's not, the reductive hypothesis don't work, and it's known not to work for some very interesting reasons. Like a lot of stuff, there's an interesting example. When you're trying to make certain tissues in the body, the tissues have to they have to grow in a certain structure. So that means like when a baby is growing in like in a womb, like a fetus is growing, the tissues do not grow correctly unless they're in the right sort of womb. And so the genetic structure does not actually encode for the tissue. It encodes for a structure that, if it is in the right circumstance, will turn into the right tissue. And so it's not, you can't reduce down to a genetic structure. You have to have the right genes in the right situation, in the right sort of like position. Otherwise it doesn't work. And so you can't reduce stuff down to the genetic structure. Now, do the genes matter? Of course they matter. But do we think it's ever going to be like, oh, this sequence is what led to it? We're probably never going to find that, because of the way we actually generate is in space, in a body. And so this is the trouble with ectogenesis. When we're trying to make like kids outside of a human womb, you have to make another sort of womb that is just like a human. And so that is part of the thing, and that is the shape of the womb is not encoded into the genetics. Okay, what are you saying here, Cinesemiox? Humans are understand stories, albatrosses do not. Yeah, so we need to have like a storytelling something or other. Yeah, imagination, things like that. The sequence in the case inside the syphilis, I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know the case of syphilis. You're gonna have to tell me the case of syphilis. I mean, I know it screws with your head. I don't know exactly how or why. Yeah, so this is the thing. Of course, there's going to be a significant genetic change at a certain point, but are we going to be able to pinpoint what genetic change was? Probably not, just because that's not how we grow. We grow in a way that is embedded, and the embeddedness can't be written into the genes. So yeah, you're gonna have to tell me more about the syphilis thing. It sounds interesting though. Alright, further analysis strongly suggests that all RCs have evolved from a single common ancestor and have a similar protein and cofactor structure. This is clearly seen when structural overlays of both type 1 and type 2 RCs are made, showing a remarkably conserved three-dimensional protein and cofactor structure, despite only minimal residual sequence identity. So that's interesting. They have like the same structure, even though they're not organized in the same way. So it's a different, like the thing is, oh, well, if you want to say people had flashes of brilliance before and going nuts, it's like true, but a lot of people lose their mind eventually. So, oh, they all had syphilis? That's interesting. So you think there might be like a syphilis induced thing? Shane says, I think on a species level, we probably can tell. Perhaps we can't point at a specific sapiens moment where structure changes, but sapiens were clearly both more imaginative and more adaptable than all other hominids alive at the same time. Well, Shane, I mean, it's a truism that we were more adaptable than all the other hominids. That's why we ended up this way. So it's like, yes, of course, but what actually made us do that? What was the cause of that? Like, I know that that's descriptive, but here's a question. Why is that the right description? What changed in us that made us more imaginative and adaptable? My favorite one is we're never going to find an answer to that, because it's just, I don't think that's the sort of question that science is going to be able to go back and look at, that what made us smarter at a certain point in time that was a long time ago. I'm not sure we're going to find that. My favorite theory is that when dogs came around, we got a lot better. I think it just gave us more time. When like humans and dogs got along, like the early wolves started living near us and like decided they were going to treat us like not enemies and like family, then all of a sudden, like us plus the dogs, that was like a symbiotic relationship, and we both just sort of like, and humans just took off at that point. I've seen a lot of people try to come up with a scientific explanation for why humans are the way we are. They come off as like just so stories, like Aesop's all of them come off like Aesop's fables to me. It's like they sound great, but there's no way we can actually ever pinpoint one thing that actually did it, because we don't actually know what consciousness is. So it's like, if we even knew what consciousness was right now, then we could say, well, what actually are the requirements for that? At the moment, we can say, well, these are necessary conditions, and this is when the necessary condition got in place, but we don't know if it's sufficient. We don't know if like this is actually what it takes. You need to have a brain at least that can be capable of certain things, and we can say, well, before this it didn't happen, but like it's really, really hard to know. But you needed these, and this is exactly what did it. Yeah, I mean, so that's fair, Cinesemiac said. Like, there's certain things that change your brain, and you're like in reacting to that, you may have flashes of brilliance. Like maybe that's a thing. It could be. I have no idea. Shane says, we were able to grow beyond living in small bands and establish complex anthropological and sociological structures that were based on falsehoods and hope. Yep, falsehoods and hope. And that's still what we run on today. Don't all of them involve the capacity for language or information communication that was nearly as specific as language? See, that's exactly a thing. It's a common thing, and this is just me being grumpy, but everyone always wants to tell you, oh, this is what's special. A long time ago, it was like tool use or language use or whatever thing. It all comes down to this old thing where it's like the soul, and people say, oh, well, we have this special thing that other things do not. It's all just crap. Yes, they're all true. We always need all of these things, but no one knows exactly what makes us the way we are. These are all necessary things, and they're all part of us, but like no one has the full story. And so the idea that like this is what did it, it's like, no, you don't know, but like that's part of it, but like a lot of other things might have that too. Shane says, I'm not even saying that Neanderthals weren't capable of identity or thought or even artistic expression, but they never accomplished the same structures. Yeah, I mean, of course, but like again, maybe they would have if like the rest of like if we didn't come along, like whatever we were back then didn't come along, maybe they would have. Maybe you give them like another 1,000 years and they would have figured it out. I don't know. So it's like the idea that like we actually have something that like we can point to that was like this was the thing, like this thing here. We're never gonna get that. Like and even if we were to find some other thing that was like gaining consciousness, we could look at it at that time, but we would not know if that is what we did. Like, there's going to be more than one way to be sapient. So the idea that like we had to have all these things, all the things we have are like necessary structures that eventually must have led to what we are now. But do we have any, are we going to ever find something that was like, oh yeah, you add this little bit more spice in and then all of a sudden we're smarter? I mean, that's like touch of God, like finger of God giving us the little bit of consciousness. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to beat up on the Neanderthals either. They may have been sapient. The symbolic Klingons of Remus. Exactly, Shane. But that's the problem. It's too far back in the past, and even then, even if we were able to go like back in the past, well, in a way we're stupider. I agree with everybody at this one. Even if we were able to go back in the past, the idea that we could even figure out what did it, I don't even know if like that makes sense, because we don't even know what we're looking for. We don't know. We could look for some of the things like, oh, could they speak English if we taught them English? Sure. If they could speak English, we could say, well, then they're already like we are. If they couldn't, do you think we could actually figure out what taught them, assuming I can speak English, do you think we could figure out what it would take to teach them English? No, because we try to teach them English to all sorts of things nowadays, and we have no damn clue what, like, if any animals can speak English. And the few cases where animals have spoken any sort of like English, like sign language or whatever, are really rare, and some of the cases are really suspect. So it's like maybe sometimes, but we don't understand this. And so like the idea that we're gonna like figure it out from like some theoretical point like now, even if we could go back and look, we wouldn't even know what we were looking for. So it's like these questions are interesting, and maybe one day science will be up to it. But like the level of specificity that we're asking for in understanding what it is to be like conscious, we can't even formulate the question well in philosophy. We can formulate the problem. We can't even formulate what is consciousness. So I thought I was pretty respectful of the Neanderthals. Mentally, it's pretty clear to me that Neanderthals and humans could directly communicate and understand. Most modern humans have Neanderthal DNA. Well, that's just because we like fucking everything. Yeah, I think that's fair, actually, Shane. Not in a less joking manner. If we could have like kids with the Neanderthals, they were close enough that like it really wasn't. There's not much different than us. It was just you could consider them a tribe of humans that died out. So like that's fine. They may have been slightly different, but like they weren't like significantly different than us. We can just think of like them as a lost tribe. Yeah, sex makes a lot. I can't describe to you when I was talking to the biologist, like the flow of genes that they would study. The humans love fucking everything and everyone. We just do. And so, like, the fact that there were any people that had any sort of ability to be control groups is kind of shocking. Yeah. Were the Klingons like that? I don't know my Star Trek. I don't know my Star Trek at all, really, in terms of like the history. I remember I watched some of The Next Generation, but I'm not really a Trek person. Yeah. The males all fuck? That's cool. Yeah. People want to get the spark of life. It is a perennial thing, at least. I don't know, maybe not in Eastern cultures, but in Western sort of Christian-oriented cultures, it's always a perennial thing. Like, what is the spark of life? I think Shane says I might be trying to ask you to accept something a lot less deep than I'm expecting. I'm just suggesting that there is a quality, perhaps a genetic quality, but at least a psychological evolution that allowed sapiens the ability to band together in large and successful groups that set them apart from other hominids. No, I think I understand your question very carefully. I think that question is actually malformed. Like, that's the problem here. That the idea that there's a quality, some sort of to me, that's a very loaded word, equality. Maybe, see, this is the thing. I'm misunderstanding your question because quality means an awful lot to a metaphysician like me. Like, quality has a long history to me, and genetic or whatnot, psychological or whatnot. But, like, the idea that there's some sort of pinpointable thing is almost, it would be extremely difficult for me to say that there's some sort of quality, like the quality, like this has like the quality of being like, I don't know, stretchy, like it's a stretchy shirt, it's, you know, cotton. It's like, but like that's a quality, and that I can point to like the stretchiness of the shirt. So this is the thing, like I'm reading, like maybe it's a lot less deep, but I'm thinking that question is almost malformed on my side. Like the idea that there's some sort of quality there. No, but like, Shane, this is an excellent question because, like, the idea that, like, I'm thinking your question's malformed, that means we're getting somewhere. That means I think we're actually getting to, like, a question that matters because it's not like it's a simple question anymore. It's not like, okay, is this up or down? It's like, no. It's like, are we even talking in the right terms to describe what's going on anymore? I don't know if most human reproduction has been through rape. Like, that's a historical question. I don't know if that's the case. Yeah. What would I prefer in terms of quality? Well, I think it's a malformed question. It's not that there's the quality. I think that you don't want to even ask that question that has to do with quality. Like, I wouldn't replace quality. I think the whole question's malformed. Like, there is no thing that we can point to. And so the idea that, like, there's a quality or property, some sort of time period, genetic structure, anything like that, I'm not sure that's the right question that we're asking about consciousness. We don't know what consciousness is or how it arises. And so the idea that there's something we can point to is asking, like, is there something we can point to about something we don't know? And so that doesn't mean anything to me. It's like you're talking about a negative thing, and then you're saying, well, what can we talk about it? No, like, I'm just I refuse to I don't have to accept that, like, we can talk this way about something that doesn't exist to me. Yeah, you think there's a thing you can point to, and I'm not talking about consciousness. That's fair, but you see, now we've got a substantive disagreement, Shane. Like, between you and me, yeah, so this is exactly it. You're thinking there is a substantive thing, and this is why it's not a bad question, because it illustrates that there is a difference in how we're thinking about this between how you're thinking about stuff and how I'm thinking about stuff. And I may be wrong about this. Like, I'm stuck in my, you know, metaphysical viewpoint about things where I'm arguing about qualities, the metaphysical quality of the change that humans had, and you're talking about a more grounded thing in terms of anthropological or biological change in fitness. What do we actually mean by fitness? And is there a specific thing that changes fitness in a certain way? Can you actually break fitness down in fine enough grain to say things like that? Like, maybe you can do it over, like, long periods. You can understand, well, this increased the fitness of this population, but can you say that there was, like, a change at this point and at this time that actually did it? Like, do we have that specificity when pointing to fitness? I'm not sure. Like, the contemporary view of fitness is kind of, I go back semiotics to Hexaetas and, what's the other one? God damn it. Well, there's always old quintessence, but, like, that's, like, the essence of things. So, I mean, like, does it have an essence? Yeah, there's quiddity and hexaety is the other one. Quiddity is the property of being a what? Like a type of thing. Does it have a certain property of being a type of thing? Like a certain quality? Do you have, like, no, in, like, the old term things, like, what, like, the quality of person? Like, are you a good person? Is he a man of quality? Is he is that a woman of quality? Is it a person of quality? And so then you're talking about essential issues of people. So that sort of things. Now, I was saying, like, the shirt has a quality or a property, you can say. Yeah, sorry. Like, is it stretchy? Like, does it have a property of stretchiness? So this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. But like, these things have to be specifiable in a very, very unique way. So what I'm thinking about is a lot of times is the specificity required to talk about certain things. So qualia are no, that's not qualia. Qualia are sort of like the things that in your consciousness that you pick out. The specificity is metaphysical specificity, like stretchiness. That's not a qualia. You don't see the stretchiness. You sort of infer it by how I'm like the stuff moves. But like a qualia would be like the color you're seeing and stuff like that. So that's a qualia, like certain things like that. Qualia are the first step on the dark road to postmodernism. Hey, I don't love the concept of qualia. Alright, so Shane says, I believe so. There was an abortive attempt of the expansion of Africa somewhere around 100k BCE that failed miserably, and then another in 80k that worked. Something changed in the population. Or, well, I have a question. Do we know if it was the population, or do we know if it was the world that changed around them? I mean, maybe. This is the thing. How could we even check for that? Like that the world changed enough that it made us more amenable to the way we want to live. The climate was pretty much the same. Okay. How do you know stretchiness is not construction of human thought? It might be. Okay, so you're saying between 80 and 100k years ago, you think that something happened. Now, the question is it genetic? Was it cultural? Did we learn something? Did we gain a technology at that point? Crop yields? Well, yeah. Okay, so we can point to kind of when it happened. Assuming this makes sense, that the migration of people is indicative of something that changed in our population. Okay. And so we can go back to there and say something changed. And there's a 20k period in which it changed. I still maintain that there's actually no way for us to go back and look, to really understand what was going on. Well, maybe if we had we could go back in time and look at everyone. But I don't even now, I don't think that might even do it. If we could go back and look at them, what could we possibly do? Yeah, domestication was recently. Yeah, and so the question is, how would we even tell the difference if it was cultural? Maybe we had some right concepts about how to organize society at that point, but it took 100,000 years, or it took 10,000 years for us to start organizing human society a bit better, and it has nothing to do with culture. Maybe we had the mental capacity for a very long time, but at that point, it took 10, 15, 20,000 years before people actually got the right idea about organizing their culture to handle the stresses of a trip. Maybe that's the sort of thing. And if that's the sort of thing that is happening, we're never going to find that out, because that has to do with words that the people were talking to each other at the time. And so maybe you needed to have the right stories told to you when you were a kid, and those stories took thousands of years to develop, that finally gave us the mental fortitude to take long trips and not kill everyone that you're living with. It could be something. And you're completely fine with that concept. Once it happened, population selected for the fitness within that model. Fine. But this is the sort of thing I'm saying. If that is the sort of thing that is completely sociocultural, that the change was completely cultural and had nothing to do with genetics, there is no way we're ever going to find out about that now. Ever. It's just not going to happen. We can make however many models we want, but I doubt it's going to we're never going to have a definitive answer. The evidence of language is in the complexity of artifacts that required cooperation. Culture can drive genetic change, and that will complicate the situation even more. in the evidence of languages and the complexity of artifacts that require cooperation. That's a great point. But the problem is, again, once we have that, we're already sort of modern human. What made us get to that point? So it's like we can sort of point to them like, oh, cool, they had art and really cool tools and culture. They were probably pretty modern at that point. And so it's like, that's cool, but like the question is, how do we get there? But like you can't read back from that point what actually happened, because in some sense, once we get into the contemporary sort of sapient mindset, you can't go back. We don't know how. Well, yeah, I'm sure, Shane. Like, it's just, we're figuring, like, back around 80 to 100,000 years, something got a little bit better. You're saying that this happened in sapiens and didn't happen in other species, and that fluke is what made us different. Well, sure, something made us different. I agree. But like I'm saying, I don't think I'm gonna be able to pick it out what it was. Now, is culture gonna set us apart? Yeah. And maybe you can point to a culture setting us apart, but again, is it the culture that allowed us to take the trip? Was it something else? Like, I don't know, like sometimes people just get lucky. But like, yeah, maybe, could be that's what did it at that time. Speciation is not simple even with living organisms. No single definition works. Yeah, well, the whole definition of species is very, very difficult. That's absolutely correct. So, if you wanted to go look, like imagine we had a time machine, like this 80 to 100,000 year point ago might be a great time to look about what was going on with people. What would we learn, like anthropologically, genetically? No idea. But like the idea that we understand consciousness is not going to, I mean, maybe you could learn something about it, but we still don't even know what we're looking for at the moment. I mean, we just don't know. Like, we don't know what culture is. I mean, we don't know what consciousness is right now. And so this is all the whole problem with the artificial intelligence people. They keep saying we've got consciousness, but again, this is like some version of consciousness that they like. Yeah. No, that's the thing. The toolkits, again. So basically, all the artifacts were about the same. Yeah. So, well, if the artifacts were the same, wouldn't that imply that the culture was basically the same too? I don't know. But it looks like if they were basically had the same tech, then they hadn't progressed in that. So maybe something socioculturally is what people got better at, and that allowed them to take a trip, that allowed them to organize better. Maybe there was a few good years of weather, and the weather just happened to be nice that for the time it took for the people to find some new place to live. I don't know, maybe there's dumb luck like that, just a weather thing. Or maybe there was some sort of biological change that went along. I don't know. This is why I'm saying that the change was an ability to believe in falsehoods and hope. Yeah, consciousness can come by degree. Half the people I seem to have no consciousness. And it means they had contact with the technology. Yeah. Yeah, consciousness is, of course, not necessarily an all or nothing thing. I said earlier that, like, at some point we had it. But it's definitely, you're right. Consciousness can come in a variety. I have no reason to think otherwise. Yeah, see, capacity might be a better word than ability. You see, okay. This might be an interesting change in what you were, or disagreement then. It was an ability to believe in falsehoods and hope. Capacity, on the other hand, if you have a capacity to do it, and it's not a quality, but like a capacity, this is a different sort of like mental sort of thing that we can do here. So if you're talking about capacity, we may have had that capacity for like 200,000 years before, but never did it. It's just some sort of power or ability that we had at a certain point, but that doesn't mean we ever took that leap. There's stories about, like, they did stories on monkeys where they taught certain monkeys that certain things were dangerous, and then the monkeys would teach other monkeys that certain things were dangerous, and then the original monkeys were, out. So, like, they were taken out, and then those monkeys would teach other monkeys that certain things were dangerous, and then no monkey would ever go back into a certain area of the room. ever, even though no one had ever taught those monkeys that certain things were dangerous or had ever experienced the danger with that the earlier monkeys had. And this went on for like generations. The monkeys would continue to teach the other monkeys not to do certain things. It's like, this is the thing. Once we get ideas in our heads, like it can stick, and or it cannot stick for that matter. So Robert's Rules of Order or avoid violence by negotiating. If we only had Robert's Rules of Order, who knows? But this is the thing. This is why I treat all these like stories like just so stories. This is how. Yeah. Okay. Good. Once you start to like, your language matters here. Like quality versus capacity. They mean different things, and so it's like memes that stick are memes that click. And because I'm just getting tired, I read memes that stick are memes that dick. But yeah, you gotta... When I'm thinking about like what happened in the past, I don't care what happened in the past because I know we're not gonna know. This is like the current thing. Like I saw people being like, oh my god, the Chinese, the coronavirus came from the lab in Wuhan. It's like, do you think we're going to get the evidence that we need to find out definitively one way or the other? Maybe. Maybe? I don't even know if it's like even possible to go back at this point. But like the idea that people are like, oh yeah, it happened. Like, are you nuts? We can't find out something that happened 2 years ago. We can't figure out something that happened 2 years ago. Like in China. Not even that far away. Or did it happen, like, or was it just like some bat with a weird cold that made us all sick? Like, we can't find out, we can't like definitively understand something that happened that just happened. And I mean, granted, people are invested in not having us find out, but the idea that we can find out something that happened 100,000 years ago when we can't even find out something that happened in a modern country, not even 3 years ago or whatever it is. So it's like it mind boggles me that like we're trying to, like, people want to argue about like, oh, consciousness. Like, dude, we can't figure out what happened in a fucking lab. So yeah, things that drive me a little crazy is like, what do you think our capabilities are? Yeah, so everyone's always asking science to do a lot of things. It's crazy. Anyhow, this is like me ranting now just about random stuff. This is why we need better fascist control so that we can make anyone do what we want and say and be studies. Yeah, I mean, if you want to put me in charge, that's fair. Like, if you just want me to be ruler of the world, I mean, I don't want to, but I mean, I might have to take it. Yeah. The question is, at some point we became more like we are now than we were in the past. Why? Is it genetic? Something's genetic. Is it something else? Shane says, I think a better way to explain this is that sapiens were able to properly exercise a capacity that might have been shared by other hominids, but that had not been used by them to that point. Once the benefit of that capacity was recognized, populations that were exercising that capacity began to select for best compatibility with the exercise of that capacity. And this ended up having a larger effect on sapiens populations as they migrated. Yeah, so you're saying there's going to be a feedback effect. Once we started getting a little bit better at this, it fed back on itself, and that increased our differentiation from the other species. I think that's probably what happened. Again, it doesn't explain what it was that happened, but yes, it started selecting for the thing that made us a little bit different and better. Yeah, it's a feedback loop. Yeah. So, I think that's absolutely right, because, you know, people, once something started working, then it got boosted. I think that's probably the method of this. You gotta pay on the paper. Yeah, so, You're like, hey, we agreed. Yay. You gotta shut up. No, feel free to ask questions about all this stuff. I mean, this is what we're discussing. We're discussing evolution and the evolution of a very important thing. I mean, in the paper, it's photosynthesis, but we can talk about consciousness and like the evolution of humans and things like that. But I mean, the common ground here is, how does evolution work? And we agree on how evolution works. It's a feedback loop. Like once something starts working, it gets boosted, the fitness goes up, and then the Peter principle, to those who have get more. Hey, read and rap. Yeah, evolution of photosynthesis based. Yeah. So, cynicism knows against the points of light. More light, Aziz, more light. Okay, see, I finally drank enough water. Can argue with people. Aziz, more light. And what was the old thing? Yeah, Goethe's last words. More light. More light. Yeah, I was in the stream, and I lurk artist streams quite often, and the influence of light in like life and film. Yes. So the artist, should I shout him out? Is absent. Oh, I don't know his name off the top of my head. I'll screw up the shout out. But he was saying, he's sometimes he gets a little worried about life. He gets existential. And he was saying, look, the Goethe's last word is more light, so it gets dark, and he gets worried about like death. And I'm like, his absence is like the little meme. Is this death, or is it a cloud? It's like, it's a cloud, man. It's like, it's a cloud. Well, more light with an eye roll, or something. Well, Goethe was dying. I bet his blood was failing him, and he wasn't getting enough blood to his optic nerve. But yeah, it's like more light. It's like, well, or is it a cloud? Yeah. In the last analysis, I don't even think we really understand what's going on with ourselves. And so the idea that like even the idea of consciousness as we currently understand it, in like even that we have like the terms, the idea, like I don't actually think we're even close. Like I don't think we're even close. Not even a little bit. And so I don't think we're asking the right questions. I don't think like these answers we could possibly come up with, I don't think any of them are going to even make sense in like 100 years. Well, yeah, Shane, but like I'm saying like it's much worse than what you're saying. Like I know I'm a mess sometimes and I don't understand myself, but what I'm saying is worse. I'm saying the terms we're using right now won't even make sense in 100 years, and like we're still gonna have the same problems, but they're gonna look so different that like the questions we're asking now are gonna look like the questions people were asking a few hundred years ago. Wait, don't you say this is why people hate philosophy? I didn't say this is why people hate philosophy. Is this why? I mean, I'm agreeing with Read and Rap. We don't have a remotely close idea at the moment, but like I don't think this may be why people hate philosophy, but I mean, this is how progress gets made either way. It's an incomplete description. We do enhance the technology we call philosophy and practice it. Sure, but like in terms of what I'm saying now is that our current understanding of like consciousness, I don't even think we have a grasp. I think we're very far away on a lot of these things. And so like we're not going to like the idea that we're going to get like the right even question to ask about the things like the genetics, like I think it's like nonsensical almost. I think people hate philosophy because they don't like feeling that they are in control. They don't like feeling that they're not in control. And philosophy definitely aren't. I completely agree with that. Gaze at our navels. Philosophy, you have to be willing to unseat some of your things you believe. at least hypothetically. And a lot of people don't want to do that. There's a blog I follow. I think I've told you this about before. Renaissance Mathematicus. It says if you get your history, if your story of your history goes ABC, but the actual history goes CBA, you have to revise what you think about history. And I feel like that's kind of what's going on here, because we're not getting the right understanding of like what's going on, and you have to like conceptually change in order to like then be able to make progress. Reading Map says, how can one hate philosophy when every field operates on philosophical presuppositions and methodologies? You can't even do science without using philosophy. Lol. Let me tell you, Reading Rap, because people want to think that they know what's going on, and they want to assume that what they understand about science and the world is the truth, and therefore it's not philosophy anymore. That's what happens to it. They just want to know the truth, and once they think they have the truth, then it does not, it's not a philosophical presupposition, it's just the truth. And that's really what I see a lot of times when people are talking about like, oh, just follow the science. Why are you bothering with philosophy? Just follow the science. It's like, you don't understand the science is using philosophical concepts, but they don't want to hear that. They want to hear, no, this is just how things are. Yeah. This is the problem. It's you see this a lot with science communicators. I think maybe the biggest like contemporary abuser is what's that? Neil deGrasse Tyson, because he was apparently a very good scientist, and he's an excellent science communicator, but he wants to come from a position of power saying this is the way things are, and he doesn't realize he's stepping on a lot of toes by making a lot of assumptions about how the world is in his science communications. Now, I love him for his science communications. I just wish he never spoke about philosophy ever, because he's almost universally put his foot in his mouth when he did that. And so, but I like the idea of like having a good science communicator. So, but this is like the thing. And it's like, if you were ask Neil deGrasse Tyson about a philosophical question, that it's going to be like, you're going to get a bad answer. And I feel like that's how we are at the moment, asking some of these big questions. We can ask the big questions about philosophy of like consciousness, but I feel like we're just asking dumb questions, and we have a lot of work to do. Oh, he's accomplishing the barf. barf. Yeah, so, well, the marketing aspect of his job is important, I think, at the moment. Oh, well, that's good. I didn't know he retracted it. But, like, the example, I think, is still, like, that's what I feel like we're going to do now. Like, in the future, we're going to retract our statements on a lot of this stuff. Be like, oh, we didn't know what we were talking about. And that's okay, because this is how we find out. We have to say something dumb to find out, oh, wait, the world pushed back. And that's kind of takes a long time in philosophy. So, that's really... But, I mean, that is the method. You have to go find out in philosophy. People don't realize, like, you're in your armchair, but you have to think really hard, and then sometimes you have to talk to people, and then the world pushes back, and you realize, oh, this ain't gonna work. Like, this is the thing. Like, sometimes you just run into logical contradictions you did not know were there, and then you realize you can't do that theory because you're gonna run into a fucking paradox. Hey, Nintendo Famicom. I don't remember now. It was not that long ago, but it was, in the last like year or two, last few years. He was saying, I mean, I'd have to look it up, but I don't know. I mean, I don't even know how to Google this. Like, Neil deGrasse Tyson put in the footage. Neil Tyson philosophy gaffe. Neil just and the value of philosophy. He dismissed philosophy as a useless enterprise and actually advised Brysons to stay away from it. I mean, I agree with him. Most of the time, you should not bother with philosophy. Let's see, what did he say? Okay, so he had an interview here. Yeah, so he said philosophy was not relevant. I mean, here, I'll just... There we go. But, like, yeah. So, but I mean, I don't want to beat up on him. Like I said, I don't, like, hate the guy. I'm just, he just shouldn't talk about philosophy. And the funny part is, I actually advise people not to deal with philosophy if they're not like specifically interested in it. It takes too much time, it takes too much effort, and if you want to do something else, go do the other thing. Oh yeah, math. Well, math have again a very sort of there's a culture to math, and I think they have like sort of an agreed upon philosophy in that area, and so then they don't want to hear about the other stuff because I think it actually benefits math to have a certain viewpoint if you are working in certain areas. So like there's no question about the structure of math. Yeah, so you can do Frege, can talk to yeah. Well, Kuhn is not in math, but yeah, Kuhn, Frege, Gödel. If you want to talk about recursion and like computability, you talk about Gödel. Frege, of course, was a mathematician who then branched out into some philosophy. It didn't get him anywhere. He yeah, some foundations a while ago, and you don't want to belabor them. Yeah, that's fine. That's basically what it comes down to, is that if you're going to do philosophy and math, you have to basically, you're going to have a certain... Kuhn did math? I don't remember that. He did philosophy, science, of course. But yeah, I mean, Frege was a working mathematician for... Though he was a professor of mathematics. Yeah, I don't know actually Kuhn's history then. Maybe I got that wrong. Maybe Kuhn was math. Oh, he did physics. Okay. Oh, yeah, he was doing philosophy of science and philosophy of physics. Absolutely. Yeah, so... Yeah. Okay. It's a common opinion everywhere where people think certain things are settled. When people realize they're not settled, then they come running back to philosophy and they have to look at stuff. But that doesn't happen until they have troubles. Once they have troubles, then they go looking for help, and then they have to go back to the philosophy to see some of the original ideas that got them going. Until that happens, they're willing to let it go. Math scares you. I don't mean stuff like calculus. I did that in college, but like the math stuff, like big math, prove 1 is 1, that shit scares me. I saw a very funny link to a paper. It says, in this paper, we prove that we can add to... we can prove that we can divide by 3. Like, they had a... it was just a published paper that was like many pages, and they were like, we can divide by 3. And they go in the show that division by 3 was... You were able to divide by 3 in some really minimal theory. Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's... And the classic example of that might have been Russell and the Principia Mathematica. I think they try to, regenerate all of like foundational arithmetic from the logic, and apparently the book is like yay thick, where they're just trying to get to adding from like logic and philosophy. I've heard it explained like this. Pharmacon says, mathematicians lump and philosophers split. I think that explains the tension. Yeah, I mean, that's fair in some sense. With a lot of philosophers are always looking for new little problems to work on, so they're breaking things down. Not all of them, of course, but yeah, that does help. Josh, on the subway. Awesome, thanks for listening, I appreciate it. Yeah. I mean, you have to want to... I mean, if you want to do something even scarier, and this is where I got into philosophy and math, you don't prove 1 is 1. You just ask what kind of thing 1 is. What is the kind of thing that the number 1 is? And if you can start asking questions about that, then you're going to have a lot of fun reading Frege and understanding... It gets really messy. Really, nope. What is the number 1? Who knows? But yeah. Semiotic says, in 50 years, I wonder if the gesture you made about how thick a document will be baffling to teens, like measuring in inches. Yeah. Well, people even know what books are. Yeah, could be. Big old fat book. Sorry. It's like Man and His Symbols, Carl Jung, right there. But yeah. Will there be paper? I sure hope so. I hope there's books. I mean, I like books much more than reading on screens. So. This is the question, though. It's like, things change. And so, these concepts that we've had for a long time, like, it's not so clear which ones last and which ones are going to continue and how things are going to look in 100 years. There's I mean, if you're doing like even Shakespeare, you have to go back and look at what they meant by certain words, because the words have changed since Shakespeare's time. So I have not read the book. I'm sorry, Semiotics. This is my dad's book. He liked all this stuff. So yeah, you know, it's like, what is progress in some sense? You're asking like, how do we make progress? Like, what can we learn about consciousness? And could we go back and look and figure it out? So I don't know. You just name dropped then? Well, I mean, it was an example of a book. Yes, I did. But like, it's just an example of a thick book. I didn't read the book, but I was just like, yeah. This is the closest book I can reach at the moment. Like, yeah, well, people understand what that is to have a book that was that thick. I don't know. Do I know any Carl Jung? I don't even know much Carl Jung. I mean, I have an idea what he said. Anyway, let's see. We've got a few more pages on this. Let me see if we can get through this. Books are quite nice, though. There's been a few studies showing slight differences in memory and cognition when reading on paper versus screens. Oh, I completely believe it. Like, the feeling is completely different when I'm reading on a paper versus screen. The Aculian tool was in use from about 1.7 million years ago to about 130,000 years ago, and we think books are old. That is a huge amount of time. A huge amount of time. That was at 1.5 something million years that it was in use from. That's amazing. It's an amazing amount of time. So, yeah. And see, this is the thing. This is actually a historical point. We're talking about evolution. One of the things that Darwin had to do was, because the going rate of belief about how old the Earth was like, even not among religious people, they just thought like, the Bible might have been like semi-accurate in its time scales. So they were thinking, 6,000 years. And even the ones that didn't believe in the Bible were like, 10,000 years, 15,000 years, 20,000. Okay, maybe the Bible's off by a bit, but like, so what? Maybe it's like 5 times. So it's like 30,000 years old. That's how old they thought the Earth was. It was mind-boggling to the people that like humans would have to have evolved over millions of years. And this was part of the work that Darwin had to do to convince people that the Earth was much older, so that they would treat the idea of evolution seriously, because it wasn't even like, it doesn't make sense on the timescales that most people thought the Earth was around for. And so we have been like, there's a toolkit that was 1.7 years old, like 1.7 million years. Like, that amount of time is mind-boggling. We do not understand that in like any sort of cognitive sense. We understand it like abstractly. But like the idea like something happened to us over that amount of time, that we were using the same damn tool, and you want me to explain consciousness over 1.5 million years? Like, this is why, like, this sort of thing, I'm like, I don't think I have the right understanding or toolkit myself, like conceptually, to talk about something that happened over 1.5 million years of like evolution and life. Like, I'm not that smart. Like, we do what we can, but like, I'm working on something, I don't even want to say what I'm working on at the moment, but like, this is like an ancient problem. We're working on something that is from like the ancient Greeks, has been around. We barely can understand some of their problems that we have now. Like, 2,000 years is a drop in the bucket, and we're trying to understand something bigger, like with consciousness or like humans. Like we're not that smart. I'm not that smart. No one's that smart. Like, someone's gonna come up with something clever, but like, yeah. This is why I was like, I'm much more cynical than I think a lot of other people. People like to think we're going to get somewhere. I don't think we're going to get anywhere. You have no idea I did for any old day? Yeah. I mean, people be asking me what I'm like planning to do. I'm like, dude, like 5 minutes is my level of planning. Like, ask me what I'm doing in the next 5 minutes. That's all I got at this point. So, Yeah. So we're discussing, but where did I have not read I Am Not So Smart by David McRaney. I feel like I am in agreement with David McRaney. Yeah. Okay. Let me see if we can get a little bit farther in this paper, because otherwise I'll be talking all night. James Webb Space Telescope? No, this is about plants. Photosynthesis. Okay. So we've got structural based stuff. Yeah, if anyone has any other questions, let me know. Well, by the way, can I ask Homozygote, PhD in molecular biology, to come on VC and discuss this if you're interested? Might be an interesting convo. He's one of the few scientists I've met that actively enjoys incorporating philosophy into his considerations. I'm in no position to continue after I can't really go for a huge amount longer at the moment. This is kind of my limit. I'm coming up on 3 hours, and I don't think I can keep going. But yeah, we can talk about that some other time, though. I don't want to be because my voice may not hold up. That's it's starting to go. I don't talk. This is the most I talk. Most of my days is only when I'm streaming, and so I have limits to what I can do. But thank you for considering it. It'd be really interesting to talk to a molecular biologist. This is why I like talking. It's nice on Twitch. You get a variety of people. When I talk about this stuff, usually it's lay people, in daily stuff, or I'm talking to really specialized philosophers that know exactly what I'm talking about, or a lot more than me. So this is a different sort of thing. So, and sometimes we get the other philosophers in here, Aristotle or Evolve Yourself, who was here earlier, these folks. But usually it's someone else. Now the other people are of course smart people, but they're not specialized in the way that we are, and so it's a different sort of discussion, and so that's interesting, but it's different. Yeah. Okay, so figure 3 shows a schematic evolutionary tree of RCs that is derived from this sort of analysis. It proposes that the earliest RC was intermediate type 1 and 2. So this is figure 3. So look at this. This is interesting. At this one point, they do actually have a common genetic ancestor. So they think they have this sort of an interesting thing in this one time. So this was actually a tree structure here, where you've got a single ancestor that did do the branching. So this is rare though, especially in gene evolution, and I mean in bacteria. That doesn't normally happen. You usually have this sort of picture where you can see it here. We've just got arrows going all over the hell. You're going this left to right thing here, this stuff. So. Yeah, we can have a discussion about evolution one day. But again, I'm crazy, so I'm not what people think I am. I'm nuts. Okay. Multiple gene duplications have given rise to the heterodimeric, two related yet distinct proteins that form the core of RCs, complexes that are found in most RCs. A second important issue that relate to RC evolution is the question of how both type 1 and 2's RC came to be in cyanobacteria. So they're saying they have converging evolution. Two different processes ended up coming to the same structures, and no one knows how that happens, but that happens because local maxima. This is the best thing to do given a variety of situations. They both kind of come from different directions, but they end up at the same local maxima. And I use that terminology from game theory, where you've got min max things, but it's not explaining anything. It's just describing what happened in the history, that they both came to the same sort of thing. Apparently, crabs or something evolved 5 times in different time periods until they came back and now we have modern crabs. But there were ancient crabs that have nothing to do with modern crabs, but they look exactly the same because it's just something that works in our planet. So that's interesting too. Yeah, it's something weird. Like it's like 5. It's not like 2. It's like 5. The various proposals that have been made to explain this fact can all be divided into either fusion or selective loss scenarios or variants thereof. In the fusion hypothesis, the two types of RCs develop separately in anoxygenetic photosynthesis bacteria and then are brought together by a fusion of two organisms which subsequently developed the ability to oxidize water. In the selective loss hypothesis, the two types of RCs both evolved in an ancestral organism and then loss of one or the other RC gave rise to the organisms with just one RC, while the ability to oxidize water was added later. Both scenarios have proponents, and it is not yet possible to choose between them. Yeah. Well, see, this is what I mean. Even in this one situation here, we can't find the history because the history, in some sense, has been overwritten too many times. That there is no clear history. There's been too many genetic swaps between things that it's become a web, and there's no tree anymore. Even if it happened in a tree shape to begin with, there is a sort of buffer zone where all the genetics have been swapped. It's in some sense the information has been lost to history because we can't do the genetic history because there's spots where things have just gotten too interconnected. There's a web there and there's no one way through it. And so this is one of these things that happens. You can't trace the history because the history isn't linear at certain points. Electron transport chains. The primary photochemistry and several of the early secondary electron transfer reactions take place within the RC complex. However, additional electron transfer processes are necessary before the process of energy storage is complete. These include the cytochrome BC1 and B6F complexes. These complexes oxidize quinols. Yikes. Yeah, this is what I mean. I'm losing it. Produced by photochemistry in type 2, such as the in type 2 RCs or via cyclic processes in type 1 RCs and pump the protons across the membrane that in turn contribute to the proton motive force that is used to make ATP. All the phototropic organisms have a cytochrome BC1 or B6F complex of generally similar structure, generally similar architecture, with the exception of the FAP phylum of anoxygenetic phototrophs. This group contains instead a completely different type of complex that is called alternatively complex 3. Super creative name there, folks. The evolutionary origin of this complex is not yet clear. Well, it's aliens then. While the cytochrome BC1 and B6F complexes are similar in many ways, the cytochrome C1 and F subunits are very different and are almost certainly of distinct evolutionary origin. Yeah, so this is what happens. You've got like different things and different ways. There's multiple ways to skin a cat, multiple ways to, I guess, put some proteins together. And so, whatever. It happens. And the question is, if you've lost the history somewhere. I was trying to think of a good joke, and I couldn't do it, Shane. And I'm happy you got there to it. Got one. Yes, I think that is exactly what happened. Oh, I don't have Keck W. I should have Keck W. I should get Keck W for this channel. If only to spite Bubba Bloop. My old buddy who hated that. Okay. So we've got basically a page, maybe one page left, maybe a little less. Let me try to get through this before losing my voice, which is going very quickly. All photosynthetic organisms contain a light-gathering antenna system which functions to collect excitations and transfer them to the RC when the excited state energy is used to drive photochemistry. While the presence of an antenna is universal, the structure of the antenna complexes and even the types of pigments used in them is remarkably varied in different types of photosynthetic organisms. This very strongly suggests that the antenna complexes have been invented multiple times during the course of evolution to adapt organisms to particular photic environments. So while evolutionary relationships are clear among some categories of antennas, such as the LH1 and LH2 complexes of purple bacteria and the LHC1 and LHC2 complexes of eukaryotic chloroplasts, it is not possible to relate these broad categories of antennas to each other in any meaningful way. This is in contrast to the RCs, where all available evidence clearly points to a single origin that has subsequently undergone a complex evolutionary development. Again, this is the sort of thing. We can't figure out something that we think we like, even something one chemical pathway here. And it's like, we know that this happened. We just can't. We can make up any amount of stories about what happened, but the idea that we make up any stories aren't going to be backed up by the data. And this is what kind of like how I feel about a lot of this historical looking theorizing. It's like, we can try, but we don't have the tools at the moment to even get close to asking this question in a meaningful way. We can ask it, but we don't even know what's going to happen in the future. Okay. Carbon fixation pathways. Most phototropic organisms are capable of autotrophic metabolism, in which inorganic substrates such as water, H2S, CO2, or HCO3 minus are utilized along with light energy. Utilized along with light energy to produce organic carbon compounds and oxidized donor species. However, there are some groups of phototrophs that cannot carry out autotrophic metabolism, and there are at least 3 entirely separate autotrophic carbon fixation pathways that are found in different types of organisms. By far, the dominant carbon fixation pathway is the Calvin-Benson cycle, which is found in all oxygenic photosynthetic organisms and also in most purple bacteria. The GSB use the reverse tricarboxylic acid cycle, and many of the FAPs use the 3-hydroxypropionate cycle. The gram-positive heliobacteria lack any known autotrophic carbon fixation pathways and usually grow photoheterotrophically. Synesemiotics, I kind of want to murder you at the moment. I'm reading these huge words that I don't know. Similarly, the aerobic anoxygenetic phototrophs, which are closely related to the purple bacteria, lack any apparent ability to fix inorganic carbon. In the latter case, it seems most likely that the ancestor of this group contained the Calvin-Benson cycle but lost the genes because of their obligate aerobic lifestyle. I mean, they're swingers then. The carbon fixation machinery is thus similar to the antennas in that several entirely separate solutions have been adopted by different classes of phototropic organisms. This would be consistent with the idea that the earliest phototrophs were photoheterotrophic, using light to assimilate organic carbon instead of being photoautotropic. The ability to fix inorganic carbon was then added to the metabolism somewhat later during the course of evolution, possibly borrowing carbon fixation pathways that had developed earlier in the autotrophic non-photosynthetic organisms. Yeah, you just go read one of these sections to yourself. Read it out loud and see how much fun you have. Transition to the oxygenetic photosynthesis. Perhaps the most widely discussed yet poorly understood event in the evolution of photosynthesis is the invention of the ability to use water as an electron donor, producing O2 as a waste product and giving rise to it is now called oxygenetic photosynthesis. The production of O2 and its subsequent accumulation in the atmosphere forever changed the Earth and permitted the development of advanced life that utilized the O2 during aerobic respiration. Several lines of geochemical evidence indicate that free O2 began to accumulate in the atmosphere by 2.4 billion years ago, although the ability to do oxygenetic photosynthesis probably began somewhat earlier. Okay, so this is an interesting time period. We know when the oxygen level went up, probably due to physics testing. In order for the O2 to accumulate, it is necessary that both the biological machinery needed to produce it had evolved, but also the reduced carbon produced must be buried by geological processes, which are controlled by geological processes such as plate tectonics and the buildup of continents. So the buildup of O2 in the atmosphere represents a coming together of the biology that gives rise to O2 production and the geology that permits O2 to accumulate. Okay, so this is sort of fascinating. They're saying it isn't just that plants showed up. It's that the plants showed up at a time period when the Earth was actually moving in a way that the carbon was getting captured. And that allowed the O2 to accumulate and maybe not just oxidize all the carbon into whatever it oxidized into. But see, this is the sort of thing that like I would not have expected coming out. Tectonic processes. That's what we're saying here. We just claimed that the geological processes such as plate tectonics and the buildup of continents is what created the O2 buildup, which eventually gave rise to things that can breathe oxygen like us. And so this is the sort of weird thing that like, okay, we thought plants made the oxygen, but no, it wasn't just the plants. It was also plate tectonics that made this situation possible. Interesting. Don't know what the significance of it is, but it shows the complexity of the things that were actually going on. It's not so simple that's, oh, this evolved. No, it evolved, but then also plate tectonics played a role here. Oxygen is produced by PS2 in the oxygen evolving center, which contains a tetranuclear manganese complex. The evolutionary origin of the oxygen evolving center has long been a mystery. Several sources have been suggested, but so far no convincing evidence has been found to resolve this issue. The possibility that functional intermediate stages existed that connected anoxygenetic type 2 RCs to PS2 seem likely. Shane says it was basically saying that some bacteria figured out how to fix carbon in the presence of light and some figured out how to do it without light. And then the bacteria knew how to do it in the light had some that had to bring it from the outside and some could make it inside themselves. And the authors didn't know if the bacteria that could do it in the light figured out how to do it first and then passed the photosynthetic bacteria on, or if the photosynthetic bacteria figured it out. Yeah. And it's like, yes, like what came first, the ones figuring one thing out or the other? And it's not even chicken or the egg. It's like it doesn't matter. Like there is no chicken or the egg. Like this, the whole process is fucked like this. It's like, and even reading your paragraph is like I'm translating to what I thought the paragraph said, and I'm sure you're right. Whatever I was thinking is wrong. But like, it's like, how would you ever figure out not even chicken or the egg, that processes like this in like bacteria that were already swapping all their stuff? It doesn't, in some sense, it doesn't make sense to ask what came first. Like, it's nice to know, but it doesn't even make sense, or it doesn't even matter what came first. All right, conclusion. The process of photosynthesis originated early in Earth's history and has evolved to its current mechanistic diversity and phylogenetic distribution by a complex nonlinear process. Current evidence suggests that the earliest photosynthetic organisms were anoxygenetic and that all photosynthetic RCs have been derived from a single source, and that antenna systems and carbon fixation pathways have been invented multiple times. Okay, so one or two things can be traced back. Everything else is sort of a mess, and we have no idea, which is cool. But that's good to know. Good to know. I thought we had like a nice discussion about evolution. I have almost nothing to say about science because like it's just like, okay, sounds good to me. The authors here didn't make any grand claims. They were just talking about the history here. And so that's great. We get to talk about technology and like memes and like the ability and capability of us to carry the abilities like that allows for evolution and change of humans and change of like any organisms, like that allows for evolution to occur, be it just genetic or mental or whatnot. So I mean, it's interesting stuff we can talk about, but like I have nothing specific, unfortunately. I can add to like these discussions. I'm not a scientist. I don't know enough about the science, but it's cool. Like it's all good to know. Yeah, I mean, anybody else, any comments here? Like my voice is starting to crack. I don't know if you guys heard it, but like I'm like choking on like air. So gotta go figure out someone to raid. If anyone has a suggestion, you'll let me know.